Welcome to episode 89 of your CYSA Plus Prepcast. Today we will examine one of the more elusive and damaging vulnerabilities in modern web applications and cloud environments: Server-Side Request Forgery, commonly abbreviated as SSRF. This vulnerability allows attackers to exploit a server's ability to make requests on behalf of users, often bypassing traditional security boundaries and accessing sensitive internal systems or external services. Understanding how SSRF works, recognizing the conditions under which it can be exploited, and implementing mitigation strategies are essential skills for cybersecurity analysts. These concepts are directly applicable to your CYSA Plus certification and are foundational in today's threat landscape. To begin, let's clearly define what server-side request forgery means. SSRF occurs when an attacker tricks a vulnerable web server into making unauthorized or unintended requests to internal or external resources. These requests originate from the server itself and can reach areas of the network that are not accessible to external users. In a successful SSRF attack, the server becomes an unwitting proxy for the attacker, enabling them to perform actions or access information that would otherwise be restricted. This type of vulnerability is particularly dangerous in systems where the server has privileged access to internal APIs, cloud instance metadata, or administrative interfaces. SSRF vulnerabilities are particularly valuable to attackers because they allow them to traverse internal network boundaries. Firewalls and access controls that protect sensitive services from the outside world are often ineffective against requests originating from within the internal environment. If a web application performs back-end requests based on user input, such as fetching data from URLs or integrating with third-party APIs, an attacker can craft malicious inputs that redirect these requests to unauthorized destinations. Analysts must identify these interactions and assess whether sufficient controls are in place to prevent request forgery. A common SSRF scenario involves an application accepting a user-supplied URL to retrieve an image, document, or metadata. If the application does not properly validate or restrict this URL, the attacker can substitute it with an internal address, for example, substituting a public URL with an internal IP address, or a cloud metadata endpoint allows the attacker to extract privileged information. Analysts must examine input handling logic, especially where dynamic URLs are involved, to determine if request boundaries are being enforced correctly. The consequences of SSRF exploitation can be severe. In many documented cases, SSRF has allowed attackers to access sensitive configuration files, perform internal port scans, abuse administrative web interfaces, or escalate their attack into full system compromise. In cloud environments, SSRF is especially dangerous because cloud instance metadata services often contain temporary credentials or configuration secrets. Attackers who exploit SSRF against these endpoints can retrieve IAM roles, access tokens, or environment configurations, leading to significant breaches. Cloud environments are frequently targeted due to the accessibility of instance metadata and the complexity of securing microservice communications. Applications hosted in cloud environments often integrate with internal APIs, containers, or serverless functions through HTTP calls. When SSRF vulnerabilities are present, these calls become a vector for lateral movement or privilege escalation. Analysts must pay particular attention to how cloud applications interact with metadata endpoints and ensure that mechanisms like MDSV2 are enforced to mitigate unauthorized access attempts. Analysts often discover SSRF vulnerabilities during assessments of third-party integrations, especially where services consume external data, interact with webhook URLs, or accept callback endpoints. These integrations often rely on user-controlled parameters to define target endpoints, making them susceptible to SSRF if input validation is insufficient. Analysts must review integrations within modern architectures, such as microservices and containers, with a critical eye toward trust boundaries and request origin verification. To detect SSRF vulnerabilities, analysts use both automated and manual techniques. Tools like Burp Suite, OWASP, ZAP, Acunetics, and Nessus include SSRF-specific scanning modules that test URL parameters for signs of unsanitized input, and unexpected response behaviors. These dynamic analysis tools simulate crafted requests and evaluate whether the server performs them without validation. This provides valuable insights into whether the server can be coerced into requesting arbitrary internal or external resources. While automated scanners provide an initial view, manual penetration testing is often necessary to verify exploitability and uncover edge case vulnerabilities. Skilled analysts create custom SSRF payloads to test various input vectors, protocols, and response behaviors. These payloads target common internal services, metadata endpoints, and non-HTTP services accessible from the server. Manual testing also allows analysts to determine whether firewalls or access controls are being bypassed as a result of SSRF. Threat intelligence plays a supporting role in SSRF vulnerability management. Analysts monitor security advisories, vendor bulletins, and vulnerability databases for newly disclosed SSRF weaknesses in commonly used platforms and software. Staying current with these developments allows teams to proactively patch or reconfigure vulnerable systems before they are exploited. Additionally, resources such as OWASP's SSRF documentation provide guidance on detection and prevention best practices that can be adopted across development teams. Documentation is an essential part of managing SSRF risks. Analysts carefully record each identified SSRF instance, including reproduction steps, affected parameters, internal resources accessed, and the potential impact. Remediation plans are developed based on business criticality and ease of exploitation, and are then prioritized for implementation. These records support regulatory compliance, vulnerability management reporting, and long-term application hardening efforts. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are more security courses on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Mitigating SSRF vulnerabilities begins with implementing secure coding practices at the foundation of every application. Analysts work closely with developers to ensure that any functionality which makes server-side requests based on user input undergoes strict validation and sanitization. This means not only checking for well-formed input, but also verifying that the values fall within a set of known safe parameters. Analysts also assess whether the application logic prevents redirection to unauthorized internal or external targets, and whether proper context checks are enforced at runtime. One of the most effective mitigation techniques involves adopting an allowlist model for URLs. Analysts recommend limiting server-side requests to a pre-approved list of domains or IP addresses, thereby eliminating the risk of an attacker directing the server to arbitrary destinations. This allowlist should be defined based on the application's intended communication patterns and updated as new integrations are approved. By using this strategy, analysts can greatly reduce the attack surface available for SSRF exploitation, since unauthorized or unknown destinations are automatically rejected. URL parsing and validation is another key layer of defense. Analysts implement strict input handling routines that restrict protocol types to HTTP or HTTPS, prohibit redirects, and reject URLs that attempt to access loopback addresses, internal IP ranges, or cloud-specific metadata endpoints. Special attention must be given to encoded inputs and protocol substitution, as attackers often use techniques like DNS rebinding or mixed encoding to bypass basic filters. Analysts conduct in-depth parsing evaluations to ensure that no parsing ambiguity or bypass techniques exist in the request logic. Infrastructure-level controls provide an additional layer of SRF mitigation. Analysts configure firewalls, internal routing rules, and network access control lists to block server-initiated traffic to sensitive zones, such as administrative networks, cloud metadata services, or back-end infrastructure components. Even if a server is tricked into initiating a malicious request, these network-level controls prevent the request from reaching sensitive destinations. This type of defense in-depth strategy is critical when legacy applications or third-party services cannot be immediately modified to eliminate SSRF risk. Cloud environments introduce unique SSRF challenges but also provide built-in protections. Analysts leverage cloud provider security features such as AWS's Instance Metadata Service version 2, which requires session-based access tokens and disables insecure default metadata access. Analysts also configure identity and access management policies to restrict what information can be retrieved, even if metadata endpoints are accessed. By combining platform-specific features with application-level controls, organizations significantly strengthen their defenses against cloud-based SSRF attacks. Web application firewalls serve as another important safeguard. Analysts configure WAFs to detect patterns commonly associated with SSRF payloads, such as embedded IP addresses, metadata endpoint calls, or attempts to access known internal ports. WAFs can block these requests in real time and alert analysts to attempted exploitation. Reverse proxies may also be configured to log and block unauthorized server-bound requests, particularly those targeting internal network zones. These systems act as a last line of defense when application or network-level controls are bypassed. Remediation of SSRF vulnerabilities must be prompt and thorough. Once a vulnerability is identified, analysts work with development teams to eliminate any use of unsafe user-supplied inputs in server-side requests. This may involve rewriting portions of application logic, introducing allowlists, or removing unnecessary request features altogether. Once remediation is applied, analysts conduct verification testing using penetration test techniques to confirm that the SSRF issue has been resolved and no similar vectors remain in the application. Ongoing training is essential to keep analysts and developers aware of the evolving nature of SSRF attacks. Training sessions include demonstrations of real-world SSRF exploitation, walkthroughs of secure coding practices, and reviews of high-profile breaches involving SSRF vulnerabilities. Cloud security training is especially important as metadata services and internal service discovery mechanisms are common SSRF targets in containerized and serverless. This continuous education ensures that both prevention and detection remain aligned with current threats. Monitoring plays a key role in identifying SSRF exploitation in real time. Analysts configure logging systems to capture all outbound server-side requests, enabling review of unusual patterns such as unexpected destinations or high-volume external traffic. These logs feed into security information and event management platforms, where behavioral rules and anomaly detection can identify SSRF indicators. For instance, a sudden surge in outbound requests to non-public IP ranges or cloud metadata URLs may trigger an alert for further investigation. Comprehensive documentation ensures that SSRF risk management is consistent and effective. Analysts maintain detailed records of each vulnerability discovered, the context in which it was identified, associated request paths, payloads used for testing, and the controls implemented to resolve the issue. Documentation also includes long-term tracking of SRF mitigation techniques adopted in codebases, infrastructure updates, compliance validation reports, and lessons learned from testing or incidents. This disciplined approach ensures visibility, accountability, and resilience in future application development. To summarize Episode 89, server-side request forgery remains a significant and evolving threat to both traditional web applications and cloud network systems. Analysts play a central role in detecting, mitigating, and ultimately preventing SSRF vulnerabilities through a combination of secure coding, input validation, network controls, platform-specific hardening, and continuous monitoring. By implementing allowlists, blocking access to sensitive endpoints, leveraging cloud controls, and maintaining strong documentation, analysts help organizations avoid the serious consequences of SSRF exploitation. These skills and strategies are directly applicable to your CY/SA Plus exam preparation and form part of a strong cybersecurity defense strategy. Thanks for listening. To learn more about cybersecurity, please visit baremetalcyber.com. There you will find best-selling books, videos, and even more free cybersecurity training courses. Please subscribe to the Prepcast and our various podcasts. And thanks for listening.